Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate everyone being here this evening, and we will certainly have a good program for you. We have two people with the department, and they're both here this evening. But the director is administration for District 03. William Bill Oliver brings over 25 years of experience in road and bridge construction on DOTD. Having spent most of his professional career at DOTD, Oliver's background in the intricacies of state and federal guidelines as it concerns infrastructure has aided in addressing highly complex engineering concerns. Diedra Druilhet is her name, and I having trouble pronouncing that probably incorrectly, but you can correct me later. With over 10 years experience in communication and PR professional, Deborah joined the DOTD in 2011 as the Public Information Officer for District 03 Lafayette Region, District 07 Lake Charles Region, and District 8 Alexandria Region. Prior to joining DOTD, Diedra served as the Recruitment and Intention Coordinator for Washington State University in Pullman, Washington, and the Communication Coordinator for Idaho Transportation Department in Boise, Idaho. Appreciate that you were with us here this evening. I assume that you will take the first part of the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate y'all having us here. I'm here to talk about the connector, one of the most important projects we have coming to the city of Lafayette. I want to talk about where we're at, where we're going, what we're doing. Talk about how we got here today. This project was a collaborative effort between FHWA, DOTD, LCG, the MPO, and the Lafayette community. Timeline, we started with the history of a Lafayette North-South Corridor study, which looked at 4 different alignments back in 1995 called the Paths to Progress. It was conducted by the Lafayette Area-Wide Planning Commission, and the study concluded that the Evangeline Thruway was the most feasible of all the corridor alternatives in terms of meeting the criteria of cost-benefit, public safety, environmental impacts, and the quality of life. The Evangeline Thruway corridor was endorsed by the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce and approved, selected, and recommended by the Lafayette Area-Wide Transportation Policy Committee for the MPO. Based on the recommendations and approval, the DOTD proceeded forward with an EIS studying alternatives within the Evangeline Thruway corridor. We looked at 6 different alignments, and the final EIS and the ROD, the Record of Decision, was based on extensive input from the federal, state, and local governments and the members of the local community. The current alignment was also designated as the Lafayette Consolidated Government's locally preferred alternative and included modifications made during the EIS process based on input from LCG and the local MPO. It was deemed to be an alignment that would best minimize environmental impacts, meeting the project purpose and need of the system linkage, improve safety, hurricane evacuation, increase mobility, and improve capacity. What this history illustrates is that we got here through a collaborative process. Years of hard work done together. We ended up with a project endorsed by the local community that fulfilled the intended purpose and need and still does today. Moving forward, we want to build on that collaborative effort, and that's where we're at today. We're working with the local community to bring to the table a whole new generation of new people with LCG, working with the Tiger Grant team and the KDNA MPO to create a functional plan and a design guideline manual for this project, which will guide the principles implemented for the final design of the project. While any project like this must meet its transportation objectives, we also see it as an opportunity to build something that is as unique and vital and special to Lafayette itself. A facility that fulfills the community needs as well as increasing safety in a vital corridor. The design guidelines document that we will create will incorporate an updated traffic analysis, bridge type studies, and an important task that reevaluates the EIS, determining what has changed since the final EIS was issued in 2003. In addition, we're going through a context-sensitive solutions process, which will feed the design guidelines document and will provide comprehensive opportunities for public engagement. Deidra's going to talk about some of the stuff we're doing today.
Hi everyone, my name is Diedra Druilhet, Public Information Officer with DOTD. I think I have been probably to just about the past 2 or 3 CCGG meetings, so many of you all are familiar with my face, but it's given me a great opportunity to be able to be here and to listen and make myself available, but more so be able to hear what the concerns are from a lot of the public, whether you're a commuter or you're a resident of this area. Just to go back to what Bill was saying, just to kind of give you an idea, this summer, basically towards the end of the summer, we kicked off what would be the next phase of the I-49 Lafayette Connector project. And basically what this phase involves us doing basically a reevaluation of the environmental document that was done back in 2003. Of course, one of the things that we know is the record of decision, of course, for this project was issued back in 2003. And we understand the fact that during that time, a lot of things have changed in this area. We recognize that over that time, you've had a change in the environment, you've had a change in the location of different businesses, or the addition of businesses or homes, or also, of course, a change in traffic. So one of the things that we're doing is we're doing a reevaluation of that environmental document, and also that one of the things that came out of the ROD, of course, were 21 commitments that we needed to fulfill that came out of the record of the decision. And what those commitments basically entail, and it's a long list, and I do encourage anyone, if you'd like more information about it, I can definitely provide that with you, but we do have all this information available on our project website and also at our traveling exhibit. But the 21 different commitments basically include various aspects such as, which many of you all have brought up in the past few meetings I've attended, a lot of your concerns, which include waste site areas, water quality, the Chico Aquifer, things such as noise, historic properties along the area, just to name a few of the different design commitments, some of the different commitments that came out of the ROD. When we built a project, that a lot of the projects would be able to incorporate the vision and the values of the surrounding communities in which we were building those projects. So this is what it allows for. It allows for us to basically level the playing field, where we as a transportation agency, we're able to build a transportation facility that fits the needs of the agency, but also really will benefit the local community as well. So that was one of the ways why we're doing the CSS, I keep saying CCS, I'm sorry, CSS process. The acronyms are quite a bit when you get into engineering. But one of the things that we wanted to do, of course, was allow for as many opportunities as possible for public engagement. And I'll be the first to tell you that this project that we're on right now, this phase of the Lafayette Connector project, it involves such an in-depth amount of public outreach and community input. This is one of the very first projects, actually the very first project, where we're applying the CSS model. And that's great for us, because our basis is that we want to hear from you. We want to hear your concerns. We want to hear your suggestions, whether it's in relation to maybe your concerns of how we plan to address contamination sites, or whether you have input on some design features in relation to the bridge structures. We want to hear all of that. So one of the things that we've done, of course, is we have a very rigorous schedule over the next year, where we have several opportunities where we want to engage the public. we just had one of those events, and I think I see some familiar faces here, where we had our very first public workshop regarding this project. This was the very first time where we had a public event where we were able to present information to the public. They could come out and basically receive information regarding the project. But more so, one of the things that allowed what we want to do at that particular public workshop is hear from you, so that way we could take that input that we got from everyone at the workshop and develop what we would call our vision and value statement, which is what we're working to develop right now. And that vision and value statement would help guide us along in terms of the next year or so throughout the next process for this project. So I do encourage everyone to get involved in the process. This project, of course, is probably one of the biggest projects that we've had in quite some time, and it is going to take a lot of public involvement and a lot of public engagement, but that's what we want. We don't want to just build a transportation project. We want to build a transportation project that's going to benefit the local community. So we'll be working along, I think Bill mentioned some of our partners in the area. Of course, it's not just limited to Lafayette Consolidated Government or FHWA or Acadiana Planning Commission, but we're also working with various governmental entities to work together to make sure that we're collaborating in terms of a strategic approach and delivering a project that's not just a transportation facility, but something that's going to be a value and an asset to the local community.
Thank you.
So with that, our main thing is, I know a lot of you have been exposed to a lot of information about the project, and that's great, but we do want to make sure, I mean, we have some information here, of course, but we definitely want to hear from you tonight. So we wanted to leave a lot of time for questions from the general public. So we do want to open it up now for any questions from the public.
Would y'all please come up, Larry?
Specific.
Okay, the site that the project, the I-49 connector is going to be over, it was said that there's a wayside in that area near the railroad tracks. If there's another area that has wayside, I'm talking about any area that this will involve in the I-49 connector. Who will bear the cost to clean up the contamination that is at the site that involves the I-49 connector? And do you have an idea about how much it's going to cost?
Well, we don't have an idea yet because we haven't fully investigated those sites. DEQ has years of files and data on those sites, and so they have basically, up to this point, have been in charge of that, all that information. We will look at what is within the right of way that we require, and those costs will either be borne through the project or by the property owners. I mean, we generally try to get that cost when we purchase a piece of property now, because this is an ongoing site. That'll have to be determined. Okay.
I know there's a lot of people waiting for questions, so I'm not going to ask all my questions. I'm going to give them a chance, but I do have one more question. When I was here at the last meeting, it was the first time that I had heard that the airport runway would have to be relocated if the I-49 project goes according to the plan that is up right now. Is that true? Is that true?
Repeat it one more time. I'm sorry.
The last meeting that I was at here at Concerned Citizens, it came up that the runway at the Lafayette Airport would have to be redone if this I-49 connector, the 5.5 mile stretch of this connector, would go according to the way y'all have it planned now. millions of dollars were just spent on redoing that airport runway. When it was done, they had pits and problems with the airport runway, causing more problems that they had to fix. I just flew on a plane in November, going down the runway, and it kind of felt like, you know, we hit a little pit, and I'm like, my God, is this starting to pit again? So, you know, it just upsets me as a tax-paying citizen that we have all these people in power that make decisions for all of us in this community. If this plan was in the making for over 20 years, someone should have known that that I-49 connector was going to go where it was going to go, straight by the airport and stuff, and that the runway was going to be in the way. So when they were redoing our runway, why didn't they put it where it would have been after the connector was up and running? And it just upsets me, y'all, because we trust government to do what's right by the people. But every time we turn around, you know, we feel like, my God, we gave them millions of dollars and they're wasting our money. We're not opposed to any kind of thing that will improve our community and the lives of the people in this community, but we are so tired of people wasting our money to do it. And I'm just frustrated. And, you know, we want progress, but at what cost? Thank y'all.
Very good.
Well, the selected alignment was part of the original environmental impact statement and the ROD, which was done in 2003. And it's called a relocation of that runway. It's originally there was a 350-foot end of the runway that would need to be moved and extended to the other end, and that was known at that time. And they had decisions. The FAA actually did a separate environmental process for the runway at that time, and so the airport and the FAA are actually in charge of that runway extension, and we're waiting for their concurrence on those conditions and what needs to be done there. And as far as the decision on the previous work, you know, the airport, that's a separate entity from the DOTD, so the decisions they made were separate from what we did. That was an FAA and an airport decision on those projects. You know, their projects, they fund those and do that construction.
Thank you.
My name's Kerry Hernandez. I'm a citizen. I have a comment, a question, and a comment. The first comment is that the aquifer, as we all know, you know, and they know, has to be secure. Okay, the question is, I'm from New Orleans, and we've had a lot of overpasses, communities destroyed, neighborhoods destroyed. The question is that will the citizens be paid, that have to be relocated, be paid fair market value? That's the question. The comment is, it is my opinion that anybody who is in that right of way that has to be relocated should be paid at least 15 to 20% above the fair market value plus the market value of the home, because that 15% will go toward relocation and pain and suffering.
The property acquisition on these type projects are done according to federal regulations, and we follow their regulations. We do 3 appraisals on property, and we pay that fair market value. In addition to that, we do pay for any relocations, even for businesses, or even if you have renters in a piece of property, we pay for the renters relocation. So we do pay for that additional cost. The federal regulations, the intent of that is to make a property owner whole in his whatever he loses in his property. So, I mean, even to the point where if there's no available housing, we build housing for people who are relocated. So we have to actually make sure that housing is available. We'll pay whatever that additional cost is. If there's a cost of additional for relocated people, we have to pay that. That's required.
Yes, hi, thank y'all for coming. Yeah, my name's Woody Martin. I'm a volunteer with Sierra Club, and I live right down here, Holden Heights, back of Judy's Inn. And I don't live right next to where this structure could go, but my home, and I think the homes of most of us in here, will be affected by whatever impacts this thing has on our water quality. And Ella started this question, and I'd like to come off of what she's saying a little bit. And the response that I've heard several times from the presenters here from DOTD is, we'll go and we'll find whatever, maybe over there at Department of Environmental Quality, they've got some samples, maybe DOTD has some samples, maybe Department of Health and Hospitals has some stuff. Where is the comprehensive evaluation of environmental degradation that happened at the rail site? We know that rail sites all over the country are contaminated with all sorts of nasty stuff. There's no sense going through the list of that. Again, you've all heard that. We know it's contaminated. We don't know the degree to which it's contaminated necessarily. It seems to me that y'all in Department of Transportation Development should have developed back when the original environmental impact statement was done, a comprehensive chemical evaluation of the water quality above the aquifer, the soil quality in the area where kids and people are walking and playing, there's businesses there, and the risk to our Chico aquifer, our drinking water. I think what we're asking is a new evaluation of what's there now. Don't just go digging around in files. Give us something that tells us what the real risk is from rail yard contamination now. That's my first point, and that's my question. I'd like to have that addressed. And I have one other question after that, but I'd like to have a response to that.
Well, one of the things of course, based on the reevaluation, what I can do, I don't have that exact information, but what I will do is I will go back and I will do some more digging, I'll do some more research, and I will come back to you with some additional information regarding your question.
Thank you. I think what this community is really asking for is a comprehensive reevaluation of the risks of contamination from the rail yard site and the power plant and the other related sites up there, because when you do a project of this size, this magnitude, you disturb all that stuff. It's going to be in the dust, in the air from the construction job. It's going to be in the runoff. When it rains, that water is going to be going down the street, and it's going to affect our groundwater if there's a penetration of the protective layer over our Chico aquifer from construction. My second question, the rod that describes the alignments, we keep referring to alignments, and I'll have to go back and read it again myself, one of our members has asked me to ask this question, and that is, could we have an at-grade improved throughway through Lafayette with protective sound barriers on the side, such that you can stop noise and improve the safety to the communities around with some attractive overpasses, walkways, and automobile traffic overpasses. Does the ROD specify the alignment only, or does it also specify that it has to be an elevated expressway?
No, the ROD develops that alignment, but also in conjunction with the interchanges and the types and the elevation of the structure. And to let you know what the environmental impact study is about, and the ROD addresses the impacts to the community. The environmental impact statement is about, it has all these commitments and about the community. When you change the type of roadway and the structure, then you change the impacts to the community. Because the ROD addresses how many relocations, how many homes, how many people are going to be moved out. When you change that configuration, put it at grade, you change noise mitigation, You're talking about a whole different type of noise mitigation. It changes the impacts to people because now the elevated structure, and you have certain places where people be relocated. When you go to an at-grade intersection and you bring these structures overhead, then you're moving a whole different amount of people, and you're impacting other neighborhood people, other communities. So it has a different impact. So that's why the ROD is based, it's based on what type of structure is there, because you want to address the impacts to the community.
I'm just going to restate, I think what we're asking for is a comprehensive reevaluation of the potential toxic impacts from the rail yard site and the power plant site.
And I do encourage you, Woody, to make sure that, and I'm pretty sure you have done this already, is submitted an official comment for record. So what I'll do is, like I said, I don't have all the answer to that specific question, but I will go back and I will do some more research and we'll respond to you.
I've got so many problems with what's been said earlier. Years ago, during the Vietnam era, I was about to get drafted, and in place of getting drafted, I volunteered. And all through all my training, they kept telling me, "Well, you're a volunteer." Well, actually, if I'd had my choice, I wouldn't have been there at all. The selection that was made by our Lafayette Council, they were given 5 alignments that were almost in exactly the same place. And they were told, which of these 5 do you want? And then we're told, well, this is the one the council picked. Well, the council might have picked something completely different if they'd been given the freedom to choose whatever they wanted. They weren't given that freedom. They were given 5 choices that were almost identical. And that's what they are using to say that this is the one that our city council has as its preferred alternative. Now, the current alternative goes over the known hazardous waste site. One of the changes that I never hear about when we talk about the changes is there's now a court decision that has determined that that is a contaminated hazardous waste site that needs remediation. So this is a serious change. I was very concerned when I saw the engineering services contract from Stantec has soil borings that go down to deep soil borings to test the soil that go down as deep as 100 feet. That goes into the Chico Aquifer, and these borings go through the hazardous waste site. There's no restriction, there's no procedure set up in the contract for doing anything special. At the Saturday meeting the DOTD had at the Progressive Baptist Church, I voiced this concern, and I was told, oh, don't worry, the soil borings are going to come much later. They're going to come after careful environmental consideration. Then, the next Monday, I found out that they were out at that same time doing soil borings near the feed and seed, which is one of the areas that's contaminated. So, I'm very frustrated by this process. If we bore holes through the contaminated area, doing soil borings, having no concern about the worker safety, having no concern about the public safety, having no concern about the contamination of our water wells from the Chico Aquifer, which is, the water well is right there close. This just seems like it approaches on engineering malpractice to do this. And Bill, I would like you to speak to that. Can you tell me, have they stopped doing the soil borings now, or are they going to continue to do those soil borings for the Stantec contract?
Well,
Bill, I was hoping that you would give me an engineering answer.
Engineering answer? Of
Yes.
whether they're doing bore? I think Diedra has the answer on whether they're doing borings.
You don't want to go on record? Come on.
Well, right now, in terms of your question about whether or not they are doing borings, I do know they are doing some borings. Now, in terms of the specific location, I will have to go back and find out exactly where the locations are.
We took pictures of them doing the borings. We can tell you where they are, sorry.
What I would like to, and I appreciate it. So if you, what I can do is I will go, of course, and I will address our consultants, our contractors that are doing the work out there, and make sure, I want to know specifically where exactly the locations are. So what I'll do is, like I said, I know they are doing some boring work. Now, in terms of the specific locations, I will have to get that information from the consultant that's doing the exact work.
Let me just say that one of my great concerns too is that the liability for the cleanup of this and for the damage that comes from the contamination could very quickly change from the railroad to the state of Louisiana and the taxpayers. If we bore holes through this area that has known it has EDC, it has toxics, it has things you really don't want in your drinking water, it has diesel fuel. We have got to protect the taxpayers of this state from taking over the liability from the railroad and boring holes through there and putting oil and other contaminants into our drinking water aquifer is just a terrible liability for our people.
My name is Margaret Oakers West. I'm a concerned citizen. I am a stakeholder, which they like to say. I think that's a taxpayer. And I'm also a citizen of the north side of Lafayette, northeast Lafayette Parish. I'm so glad that Mr. Oliver's here because I've been wanting to hear this said out loud. Do we have a number exactly of how many homes, and I'm not talking about historic churches or anything else that's going to be, flattened, but how many homes that are currently occupied are going to be raised, R-A-Z-E-D, by this project? Thank you, Mr. Oliver.
$150, $160, somewhere around there. I want to say that the numbers around 160 is the homes that are the relocations of existing homes that are going to be relocated on this project. It's in the environmental document. So we're in the process. We're doing on the project. We're doing what's called advanced acquisition. That's what we call it. We got approval to do that, where we go in and voluntarily acquire property for people that are willing to sell properties. People or businesses, residents or businesses, that feel that they're ready to move on and they're selling the property. And so we're going in and they go to LCG, and LCG then sends the property to us. We go through the appraisal and the acquisition process. So we're presently buying some of the homes and businesses along the corridor, and then we go in and either move or demolish the buildings. Most of them are unusable by that time, and so that's part of our process ongoing.
So what you're saying is, so how many homes in the history of this project, which has been either on the down low or now after the Rosa Parks meeting got back up front and center, how many homes have been bought, demolished, either way? How many homes have been displaced because of our project, this project?
I think there's about 69 parcels. Yeah, about 69 parcels have been bought. How many of those are
Parcels,
homes?
it could
I'm
be
not sure.
a
That's
zillion
properties.
or?
No, those are separate properties were purchased.
Okay.
This is feudal right here.
69
Got it.
pieces of property that we purchased.
Okay.
I can't give you the exact number of those that are homes, or some are businesses and some are homes. They're mixed-use properties. Some are rentals, some are homes. But there are 69 pieces of property that we purchased up to date.
First, thank you all for this showing. You next. Beg your pardon, sir. My name is Marshall Broussard. I'm a lifelong resident of Lafayette, except for the time I spent in the service. My background is science, and my bias is science, not engineering. I think there's an absence of science in this project, and I would like to see some of this monies devoted to it, but that's beyond the point right now. First question, $20 million. $20 million from the Tiger Grant. We asked at our first meeting, there were a number of people who asked the DOTD to make public those expenditures on a timely basis. And I don't recall the answer because I don't think there was an answer, except to say that at the end of the project, perhaps we would have a public accounting. My question is, can we have a public accounting monthly from now on? That's question number one. Question number two is, are we boring in the contaminated area? And I have a comment about the airport question that was first up here. I used to fly jets and I know a little bit about it. The idea of shortening a runway is ridiculous. 350 feet and you're going to lose the airport. You know, the runways are short enough as it is for the big jets that are flying in there now. So, no cutting it. If you cut the runway, you're in Lafayette Airport is passé. They're going to all be going to New Iberia. Forget it. Okay. Second thing is about the runway is if you extend it, you're going to go into a wetlands. Everybody knows that. But what we're not talking about is, one, the wetlands drainage would be affected, and two, you would have to be importing tons and tons of fill to extend that runway, a very, very expensive project, which ought to be added to the cost of this project. I mean, we're not being realistic by ignoring that. So, two questions. Are they boring in the contaminated area? Because I was the one that saw the little derricks up and down the road there. And how many borings are planned and where? Second is, can we get timely public reports on the expenditures from the Tiger Grant? And what I mean by that is, who's getting the money?
Just to clarify, the Tiger Grant it falls under LCG, and so the work is separate from what we're doing right now. The $20 million contract you're referencing, that's the work that we're doing. The Tiger Grant is something different. So I just want to. Okay. And to your question about the expenditures, you said you made that request at the first public meeting?
Yes, December the 3rd. You weren't there.
Okay. No.
Was that a Tiger Grant?
No, that was the
community.
the community meeting. Okay, what I will do then is let me go back and did you make it in person or you wrote it down or?
It was written.
It was written. Okay. Let me work with our team member who goes back and collects those responses, and let me pull your request. And I want to make sure that we're able to provide that information if we can.
Okay. About the borings?
Okay.
About the borings, you know, I can't answer the borings because the district here does not provide direct oversight over that project. That's a consulting project out of Baton Rouge. So we're not providing direct oversight on those activities. So that's really why I can't answer that. To talk about the runway, to clarify the runway, it's not a shortening of the runway. It's a removal of one end and a movement to the other end and it's about the, what they call that, the RPZ, it's about the flight path, to clear the flight path because of the overhead, because of the interchange that goes into University in Surrey. So it's to, once you start building an elevated roadway for that intersection, that interchange from Kali Saloon ties into University in Surrey. There's a connection there because those two roadways are so close together. That interchange, the ramps and stuff kind of, they move from one intersection to the other one. And because that has to be elevated for that reason, it interferes with the flight path. So that's the purpose.
Oh, good. Yes, young lady is next, but coming up. Juan, I'm thinking of something that possibly can work as well. Both of y'all do.
Sure.
The questions are being asked. You said you need to maybe do some proofing and come back with us. I think it's a good idea to have it nailed down as to when it's going to take place. We have an opening, we talk about 5 months.
Carol, we can't hear you.
What?
To the mic.
I'm talking to the young lady. How about this? Is this better?
He'll hear you.
Anyhow, some of these questions can be answered if you could commit for March the 7th. We have an open date. That's the first Monday of March. How about you? Okay.
Well, I do it. Let us go back and look at our calendar, make sure that we can
But
attend.
in other words, but you're saying that you're going to be doing this, you can move some things around because you're telling this audience that you're going to have answers, when you have the answers and where they're going to be, and whether or not the questions and so forth. So I think that if you can commit to having those questions, I think it's going to make it for a better meeting and good information.
And if we're not available to attend the March 7th meeting, what we can also do is submit, because I know there were quite a few questions that I needed to go back and pull some more information on. If we're not able to attend that particular meeting, then what I can do is pass the information on to Carol. And I believe, do you guys have an email list?
I'd certainly like to have that being said, we talk about a 5-month extension to make all this work. That certainly one of y'all would be to answer those questions.
Sure.
Are we allowed to give our questions so that they can go back?
Yeah. After the meeting is over, please feel. I think there were quite a few of you that I need to go back and get some additional information. So if you could come up and give me your contact information, we would definitely get back in contact with each individual as soon as we can.
So please do that. Have this meeting. You'll be here to ask specific questions.
There's Sally. Hi, I'm Sally Donlin. Marshall said he was, what did Marshall say? His background in the sciences. My background is in the humanities, so I'm concerned with the people aspect of the project. And first I want to thank Deirdre for coming. She must have to get combat pay. She's at every meeting, even more than I'm at. And Bill, thank you for coming. Okay, these are jobs these folks have to do. I understand, especially about Deirdre's. I spent 20 years working in public relations in New Orleans, and I understand how important it is to have, you know, a kind of a cover story, a line that's out there that ties everything together. But I also think it's incumbent upon those of us who have been involved in this process for a long time. I'm thinking about when I first got involved shortly after I moved back to Lafayette from New Orleans in 1999. Right before the ROD was issued, that last time it surfaced. I just have to correct some of the information that was given out here as part of what I think is the party line, and that is that the last time around this plan was endorsed by the local community. How many of you here were involved back then? Okay, do you think it was endorsed by the local community in an overwhelming fashion? No, it was not. So I just, my first comment is just to remind everybody that it's really easy to say things, and if people continue to say the same thing again and again and again, and nobody stands up and corrects it, all of a sudden that, or over time, that becomes the truth. This was never a well-received plan. It has received opposition every time it has resurfaced. If it hadn't, it would already have been built, okay? If it hadn't, the chamber, one Acadiana would not be spending just
boatloads of money on these slick campaigns, trying to convince everybody it's a good thing, okay? All right, so that was the comment. But anyway, I appreciate y'all coming here. But I've been fighting this fight for a long time. Okay, so my friend Margaret asked about how many families will have to be relocated, and I think how many businesses. I'm not going to belabor that point. But I also want to ask a question because, Bill, earlier you said that in instances where families were to be relocated, that even if there wasn't housing, which those of you know that there is no affordable housing in this community, I mean, zippo, okay, that DOTD would build that housing. So just to make it clear to those of us who are probably going to be caught paying for this thing, when we say that the DOTD or the federal government or whatever pays for this housing, where does that money actually come from?
Right. Right. It's not in that budget.
Well, that money is funded to the project. Presently, for acquisition, the funds, there's two sets of funding. The department is providing some funds, and the LCG are providing some of their urban systems or their federal funds, which were MPO funds, and they providing some funding to the acquisition of those properties. And so that's where the funding's from.
Okay, so for those of us who kind of forget in our civics classes, when we say federal money and state money, that money comes from taxpayers, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
My name is Alfred J. A.J. Stahl. In New Orleans, I'm known as Jerry. I'm known as a drive-by commentator. I have few roots, and here after the storm. And when I heard Woody talk about a comprehensive research project, it gave me pause to think about the great conifer pines. They're 5,000 years old. The redwoods, they're old too. That we're here talking about how many teeth are going to be on the blade that's going to cut the tree down. The relocation, the borings. They're going to do a study and find out we're at risk. That's going to be a risk they've already decided to take, that the hazard from the driving of piles is going to risk affecting the water that we drink. So I don't think the issue is what we're focusing on, cost of relocating homes. So what's the elephant in the room? Why aren't we discussing going around this area, and that everything else is academic? Studies. We're going to cut the baby in half, count the tree rings. How many teeth are going to be on the blade of the saw, and who's going to work the saw, and how well made is the saw going to be that's going to cut this magnificent tree down? I think the issue is, why aren't we talking about going around the city? And is it too late? And if that sounds absurd, that's my line. I talk absurd.
And thank you.
Okay, the gentleman's question, of course, was why aren't we looking at other options in terms of this project? Well, basically, one of the main things, of course, is that we have a record of decision in place that identifies a selected and approved alternative. I'm sorry, a selected and approved alignment for this particular project. And to answer your question, other options were looked at in previous studies. And based on those previous studies, in terms of, we looked at a western loop, we also looked at the option which some people identify as the Tesh Ridge option as well. And based on those particular studies, what came out of those studies was that those options would not be able to address a lot of the safety concerns, traffic congestions, in terms of the current situation along the Evangeline Thruway. And so that's why those other options were not considered moving forward in the environmental process.
18th January, Bill Fontenot spoke about the Y-49 problem. Frank, our president, asked him, was it pretty well locked in cement already? Can we change it? And Bill Fontenot kind of nodded his head and said, no, because of this record of decision. A federal organization is going to ram this thing down our throats one way or the other. By the way, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. But wow. Bill, you mentioned endorsed by the local community. To my count, there have been 17 local meetings. Hundreds of people have come forward and said, we don't want this. We have serious concerns about the way it's built. And yet you keep talking about context-sensitive solutions, an acronym. You want input. How many hundreds of meetings do we have to have before you change your opinion? And that's what it is, that we don't want that the way it is, the way it's been designed by this record of decision. Things have changed. Time to rethink it, redo it. If you keep having meeting after meeting after meeting, eventually you're going to wear people down and say, oh, okay, we'll go with it. I don't think it's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Just not going to happen. We have no visible models of this thing. We have PowerPoints. We have drawings. We have things. Nobody's ever put anything down on paper what this thing is going to look like stretching over our city like a giant monster. There's $11 million been set aside for this. If we could get this defunded by the Lafayette General Parish Council, we can slow this thing down. Bill, you said the DEQ has all the information, but you were introduced as the engineer in charge. Don't you think you ought to ask DEQ to give you all the information? Seems only fair to me. They're drilling down there. The oil fields for generations have been taking soil samples every 30 feet on wells thousands of feet deep. Seems like every 5 feet that auger goes down and brings that dirt up. There ought to be somebody there with a 1-gallon bucket to catch a sample of that and put the lid on it, seal it tight, and send it to some laboratories around here and let's find out just what's in that soil. We talk about it, but nobody's got any samples of it. Until we get some laboratory results back, we're not going to alter this record of decision. Thank you.
Well, just to comment on, I'm sorry, what's your name? Larry? Okay. Just to make a quick comment, or response, sorry, in response to Larry's comments, of course, in terms of the record of decision, I know we hear a lot about that, the record of decision in terms of, and you had a good question, you referenced Bill Fontenot when he came, when he was here at the particular last meeting. We, based on that record of decision, one of the things that we are obligated to do, we have to go by what's in that record of decision in this particular process. And we're here.
It's wrong.
One of the things that we're doing is we're hearing, you know, your comments, this room's comments, but those aren't the only comments that we're hearing also. And we're taking into consideration everything that we're hearing. But with that record of decision in place, what we have to do, of course, is move forward in terms of what's in that particular record of decision. And that alignment, like I said, it was selected and it's approved. in the record of decision based in 2003. And to go back, because I've heard this quite a bit tonight, was that there was this alignment, so to speak, or the alignment was supported by the local community, and actually it was. The local community, we do have.
It was supported by the politicians, not by the community.
If you have those questions, you got to sit with her later. We're trying to record this, so it'll make a little bit of sense, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me finish my response. I understand that this particular project is very sensitive to some, but I'm going based off the information that we do have available and the history in regards to this project. We get questions all the time, and people ask us all the time. Some of you have asked, well, why does this particular alignment have to be elevated? We get that question all the time. Why can't it be at grade? And that's a very fair question. One of the main reasons why it's elevated is because based on the feedback that was given from the public, from the local community during that time. Of course, this was before I was here, this was before Bill was here, and the public, one of the things that we heard a lot from the public, and what we're hearing even now from the public, was that the current situation of the thruway now and even back then caused a lot of division amongst the different communities in the area. So they wanted a project. They wanted to address a lot of the concerns along the thruway, but they also wanted a project that would allow them to recreate the connectivity between those various neighborhoods along there. And that was a lot of the reason for the certain sections of the project to be elevated in certain areas. And I'm sorry, you had another question too.
That's it right there.
Oh, that's it? Oh.
We'll get the next speaker coming up.
Hi, my name's Ed. I went to the last meeting, I think it was January 23rd at the library. We didn't get a lot of new information, and I got kind of bored. Behind me, I got kind of bored because we weren't allowed to ask questions, but behind me there was a map. I wish they had the map here, because it would go from that wall to about right here.
Yeah.
And it was the actual route that they're going to have. Now, I took a little picture. Too bad this thing's so small. I'd like to be able to project it on the wall. But I took a picture, and I began to learn what's really happening by this. There's going to be 2 elevated roads. Okay, try to stay with me here. I'm going to try and describe it. One starts at about I-10, goes up in the air, stays in the air, comes down near, back to grade, near the downtown area. It stays on the ground right around the downtown area for about 400 yards, and then it goes back up on an elevated highway all the way across the river and comes down past the airport.
St. Martinville Parish.
Right. Now, one of the questions I have, I was kind of shocked when I saw the downtown area. Why bring it back down to grade close to, you know, where you got the wires and the Jefferson Street and all of that? Another thing that bothered me a lot is that the road does not follow the Evangeline Thruway. It does not. By their own plans, it does not. Evangeline Thruway was about 150 to 200 yards off the railroad. You all know that. Yeah. And the space in between is where the old railroad repair facilities used to be and where the pollution's at.
Right.
Whatever engineer was drawing it up moved the road over. It does not follow the Evangeline Thruway. It's been swung over to where when it comes down to grade, the new road they're proposing is actually going to be about 20 feet, 20 or 30 feet from the railroad. It swings over. It does not land or follow the Evangeline Thruway. In parts it does, further out, away from downtown. But when it comes to the downtown area, somebody moved it over, much closer. You know, it's going to be interesting having a festival with diesel trucks blaring by. You know, and why move it over when it's going to come down at grade on the polluted area? You know, I don't get this reasoning, and I hope the engineer can answer some of this, I don't know. It looked to me like a kooky plan, and I didn't like the way it was, you know, I'm not an engineer, but I want to know if you know why that was done.
And as Diedra said, you know, we weren't there. We were going by what the records we have. My understanding of the alignment change in that area was in response to concerns of the Sterling Groves community and some of the other neighborhoods in the area to move the structure away from St. Genevieve Church, the school, and those residential areas, and to provide more space to Sterling Groves, which is a historic district. It's a historic neighborhood. And so my understanding is that's the reason for that realignment. That was the selected alternative. My understanding that's the reason was to get it out of the neighborhoods during the downtown area.
Here we go.
The railroad that we're talking about in contamination is owned by George Soros.
Diedra, thank you and Bill for coming down here very much. Would you look at me for a minute?
No.
Do I look like a millionaire with unlimited funds? I'm not Bill Gates. I'm not Donald Trump. I'm Ray Green. I live here in Lafayette. I heard this gentleman say something 15 times because I wrote it down about we. Who in the heck is we? We are the taxpayers. I don't think, tell me something. We need millions of dollars to replenish our school system, Lafayette Parish Schools. We need millions of dollars because of our infrastructure. We need bridges, we need roads, we need flooding control. Are you telling me that this is more important than our school education facilities and our infrastructure? Are you telling me that? I have about 10 questions, but I won't take up any more of your time. But I just want to know, where does this system stand in regard to the school board needs and our infrastructure needs? Thank you.
Ray, thank you so much for your question. And I do share your concern. I do understand the need for enhancement in the various schools and the need for schools in the area. However, I can't speak on behalf of the school boards in this particular area, but one of the things I can do is speak on behalf of DOTD. And one of the things that we look at, of course, is we want to make sure that when we're making transportation improvements, that it's not, you know, something where we just go out and build a particular structure, or we decide, you know, we're going to put this here or put this there. We have what we call a priority program, and based on that program is feedback that we get from the public calling us or emailing us or telling us about specific roads or that need replaced, maybe a new road that needs to be constructed, a new bridge that needs to be built, or a bridge that needs to be replaced. Or, for example, we look at our existing infrastructure that's out here right now to look and see what type of improvements or enhancements that can be made. So I do understand your concern, but of course we at DOTD, we definitely want to make sure that when we are we're in the process of whether we are doing some preliminary work regarding a particular transportation project, that we're making sure that we go out there and we vet the necessary information needed. And now, in terms, I know your question had to do whether this is more important than the school needs. I can't speak on behalf of that, but I do understand your concern.
Thank you. Who all is we? You mentioned we 7 times. Who all is we?
Right.
We're just talking about DOTD.
Sorry to come back again. I know you're tired of seeing me. My question is this. You have, DOTD in every meeting we've met that I've been to mentions that they studied 6 different options. Now, I was around at the time and not really involved, but it's my understanding that the Tesh Ridge option was never studied or even considered. This was to be a Lafayette Parish deal, okay? So, my question to DOTD and to you, Diedra, who isn't DOTD, excuse me. My question is this. If you in fact did consider the Tesh Ridge, may I please see a copy of the engineering dynamics involved?
The study that was done on the different alignments is a 1995 study by was the Lafayette Planning Commission at the time. That study is posted on the Lafayette Connector's website. It's available for your viewing if you'd like to look at it. They went through evaluation of 4 different alignments. There were 2 eastern alignments, one a little closer, one a little further, and you'd have to look and see how that alignment matches what they call the Tesh Ridge. I assume it's the same. It goes out into St. Martin Parish, and they did all kind of evaluations concerning environmental cost-benefit analysis, and looked at how it affected traffic, and determined by cost-benefit on the Evangeline Thruway. And that's what I can attest to.
You gotta go up there, Bill. Repeat what you just said.
The 1995 study, it's called Paths to Progress, was done by the Lafayette Planning Commission. And that study is posted on the Lafayette Connector .com website. It's on there for your download, and if you want to look at it.
Thank you.
Okay.
May I address this gentleman's question before you ask yours? Because his comment is erroneous. Thank you very much for granting me this opportunity. My name is Fred Prejean, and I'm a 10-year veteran of the Lafayette Planning Commission. I've been off for several years, but I was certainly on the commission when this entire matter was brought to us. We were not given an option to choose the route. Staff provided us with their recommendation and all the supporting documentation to try to justify this route. Their recommendation was backed and was backed by several sources, some of which have been mentioned: the Planning Commission, the MPO, our elected of parish councilmen. And by the way, the MPO is a committee comprised of parish councilmen. And I just want to correct the gentleman, because you were not around, I realize. And I think you're both 2 brave souls.
Absolutely.
So there's nothing personal to it.
Good job, Diedra.
But I have to say, you know, there was an economic interest at play in selecting the current route that has been chosen. And we are now into our 3rd administration since decisions have been made regarding this route. 3 different administrations ago, the decisions that were made then. Times have changed. None of those people who had the bulk of most influential input are in office today. And they did what they did because of economic reasons. They wanted traffic coming through Lafayette for economic reasons. The hell with the health of people, that was never a consideration. So I just wanted to make the point that the Planning Commission did not have the opportunity to view the benefits of having this project go around Lafayette. We were never given that information. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Larry asked about a visual for this project, and I want to know if y'all will be putting up a visual pictures, like a 3D visual picture, so that the community can see this with our own eyes, because I'm a visual person and I like to see things to truly understand it. You don't have to answer that now. I have two more questions. What would be the greatest benefit? That was one of my questions, sir. What would be the greatest benefit to the Lafayette community if the connector will be right near the area where we have festivities and stuff? How is that going to affect that? You don't have to answer now, but I would like an answer when you do come back March the 7th. And you know, I keep hearing that this is going to happen and stuff, but as people have been saying, if it's to the detriment of our community, I pray that this is reconsidered and the right thing is done by all people. The money's gone, it's gone. We're kind of used to the government wasting our money, and I know that sounds ugly, but we are tired of it. And my third thing that I wanted to say is, if this project site were changed, where would the I-49 connector be located? I would really like to know, what would your second option be? Thank y'all, and thank y'all for your time. We don't mean to be ugly. We're very passionate about this because if it doesn't affect our health, it will affect someone we love's health in the future. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much. I don't want to take up much of your time, but I do want to thank Mr. Prejean for your comments. And you're right. Of course, I can't speak to what was done in the past. I wasn't there in a room when those discussions were had, or documentation was made available. But one of the reoccurring things that I keep hearing from tonight, of course, are a lot of your concerns, and that so much time has passed, and that, of course, a lot of the people that were a part of the process those many years ago are not here now, and that a lot of things have changed. And you're absolutely right. A lot of things have changed. Now, one of the things I will say, because I do understand you guys, you're a very passionate group, and we have a lot of passionate people in regards to this project. But that's why we encourage everyone to give their input so it can go on the official record. Because one of the things, I feel like I keep having a bit down. Okay. Well, one of the things that we definitely want to make sure, of course, with this project is that, like I said, we're doing a reevaluation. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is that we're taking the time to, because of the fact that we know a lot of things have changed, we can't just pick up where we left off. And we need to hear from you. Maybe there are some things that we need to go back and reevaluate in terms of the structure, of course, not the alignment, because that with the work that we're doing right now, the alignment is set. based on the rod. But maybe there are other aspects along the alignment, not maybe, but there are other aspects along the alignment that we could possibly look at in terms of evaluating based on the feedback, things that may need changing, whether it's the locations of some particular interchanges, whether design is changed, or maybe the location of certain frontage roads or areas of that nature. So based on the feedback that we get from you all, that's what we want to hear. And because our main thing is that we want to make sure that we're hearing the information that you're giving us, so that we can go back and maybe work with our engineers to develop or present some different alternatives for that's going to work the best for everyone, not just DOTD, but more so the local community here. So we do encourage everyone to get involved, continue to submit your official comments. If there is, one of the things that we do ask for the public, of course, is that any way that you could be specific in your comments, we would really appreciate it, so we know what to go back and look for. So I've given the various ways that everyone can submit comments, and like I said, please feel free to contact us.
Email address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do we have comment cards?
No, I don't have any comment cards tonight, but what I can do is for the next meeting, I can bring.
At the end of the meeting, I'd like you to sit down. People that have a question, we're going to go ahead and do it there. Let's go ahead and make it happen. Okay. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on that?
Give us your email address so we can email you our questions.
Well, I know. You can get that in a minute. So go ahead.
I'd like to hear them.
Oh, okay. Of course, like I said, there are numerous ways. My thing is I want to make sure that your comments are on the official record. So while I can take your comments here, I know there is some comments for that we need to give some feedback on. I do want to make sure that your comments actually get on the official record. So what I'm going to do is you can either do so via the website, LafayetteConnector.com, and there is an area where you can click and submit your official comment, or if you go by the Rosa Parks Transportation Center, we do have comment cards available there. Also, I don't believe we have it at this location right now, but we're going to work on getting some official comment cards placed at the downtown library as well.
Hi, my name is Jerry Benedetto. This is the first time I've come here. Looking at the plans and all, I was wondering why we're going to build on a 20-year-old plan that ends up obsolete when it's completed, and then that we should build on a plan for future needs. One thing that I've noticed is from the plans that the I-1049 interchange is already kind of outdated for handling the traffic, and if you connect the interstate to that, it's just going to make it worse. You know, we're going to have pileups on Interstate 10, people trying to get off of 10 to get on 49. That we need to build an interchange that, you know, would handle these future needs. And also, I wonder about the welcome center that's located between the thruway. From the plans, it looks like it's going right through it. You know?
That's gone.
So I'm really in favor of I-49 east of the city, and just to revamp the thruway, you know, to be, you know, local needs. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Well, to let you know, even though the plan that's there is 20 years old, it still works today. The traffic models that are used to develop plans for these type projects are projected out 40 years, so that those projects are not, I mean, in 20 years they're not just obsolete. Now there will be some changes in some of the intersections and lower level things that may need to be adjusted from the original, but the structures itself and all will handle the needs that are there today and in the future, because they'll be projected out. Your other question was the I-10, I-49 interchange was not part of this original study. However, we are aware that it is a need, and we plan on having a separate study to look strictly at that interchange, because it's not being addressed in any of the other things. Right now, we're looking at 3-laning I-10 from I-49 to the Chaffalaya Basin. We're going to drop a lane at Henderson on the eastbound side. The westbound side is going to pick up 3 lanes at the Basin Bridge, and that's going to drop off when you get to I-49. But the need's there for the interchange. The issue becomes that interchange in itself is an entire project. It's over $100 million, and it's going to be a very elaborate design and construction, because that old design is no longer useful. With the amount of traffic that's there today, you need some multi-level interchange, which is going to be fairly expensive, and that's just to meet the needs today of what's there today, because I-10 in that area is getting fairly up to capacity, so the needs in that area are there. They're there today, and we're aware of that. It's a matter of balancing the needs across the whole area. We have a lot of needs.
Diedra, did you want to have anyone ask you questions, or the ones that would like to meet with you, you can redirect them to fill out the cards that you're talking about, so that we can have a program and maybe answer the questions on that date?
Basically, for those of you that had questions, if you could just meet me over here. So I want to be able to make sure that I'm taking down everyone's question and I get your exact contact information. But also, I do want to encourage you to take that same question and make sure that you fill out an official comment card. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the Highway Department for being here, because I know you get on a hot seat every now and then, and this has become a hot seat. And it's become a hot seat because there's so many people in the community have looked into this, have gone to meetings, that listened to presentations, and maybe some of them didn't like what they hear, and they look further and further, and that's got us where we are. It's the public. You know, the public's in the driver's seat on these decisions if they want to drive, and that's what's happening in the Lafayette community. They're looking at this and saying, you can't put this in a big hazardous waste site. Right. You know, our public health is #1, and there's nothing more important. And you think if it's not an economic issue, think about Flint, Michigan. Would you want to go to a motel there? Would you want to go to a restaurant there? Would you want to buy a home there or start a business there? It's an economic disaster for that community. And so we can't fool around with public health and allow the doctors to find out too late that kids have undeveloped brains because of lead. This place has lead, it's got asbestos, it's got benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, and PCBs. Everything you can imagine could be hauled on rail ended up on this site. And it's on the surface, it's in the ground, and we don't know if it's reached the Cheek Aquifer, but it has reached the groundwater at 8 and 20 feet. So that's a just concern for this community. We can put roads anywhere, but we have no business putting it where it puts our health in harm's way. Thank you.
Harold, thank you for your comment. You're always such a delight. Harold knows I love him. No, Harold's a great person, and I really do appreciate his comments. As a matter of fact, Harold, we share your concerns. We do understand your current concerns, and that's why in projects like this, we definitely want to make sure that we're making ourselves as available as we can. So we do come out to meetings like this. Harold says we get on the hot seat all the time, but that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we're making ourselves available to the public, to the people of this community. And one of the things that we're going to continue to do as we're going through this reevaluation process, we're going to make sure that we're working with the appropriate governmental entities to make sure that we're working together to address a lot of the concerns and issues that many of you have brought up here tonight, and also via the comment cards that you've given us over the past few months. So we do hear you, and we're continuing to listen to you, to your suggestions, to your concerns, and just know that your comments, your concerns are not falling on deaf ears. Everyone's being heard, even not just from our consultants or locally here in the district, but also at our headquarters in Baton Rouge. And that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we're making ourselves available and that we're meeting the needs of the public.
Here we go.
I know that we keep saying the same things over again, and y'all keep saying the same things over again. And I don't understand that we've come to a realization that we have contamination, and why we would ever think that we could go in there. Why cannot our federal government highway system, our state highway system, our local highway system, our local politicians, our local people, why can't we just say, hey, it was good 20 years ago, but it's bad now. We have found out so many things. It is bad now. And can't we all come together and say, how can we make it good? How can we move this? I mean, why can't we throw this rod up? Why didn't the federal government want to say, we're not going to go down there and contaminate the possibility of water for these people for eternity? You know, that to me is, I don't understand why we can't just say, hey, it's a mistake. Let's all go back to the drawing board. And I don't think it would take 20 years.
There you go.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah's my other delight. Harold's partner in crime. No, but Sarah, thank you so much for your comment. And like I stated before, we are going to continue to do our part at DOTD, but in doing our part, we want to make sure that we're collaborating with those other governmental entities. And in terms of this project, whether it's moving forward, I think that's going to be a question that you may want to go and have with your local leaders, your local legislators. So, but like I said, I do encourage everyone to, one of the things that we do want for everyone to keep in mind is that this is a process that we're going through right now under this contract, and there are many intricate aspects to this particular process. So we do ask a lot of the questions that you all may have. We may not have the answers to right now, but we do plan to have some of those answers at the end of this particular process. So we want to come back to you. Like I said, we'll be presenting a lot of this information at upcoming public hearings, environmental hearings that we have. So I do encourage everyone to stay involved, get engaged. And I don't have to tell that to this group because I have seen just about every single phase and every meeting I've been to. And I commend you all for staying involved because that's where it starts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. As you can tell, Diedра's a lot more articulate than I am. I'm just an engineer. You know, I will tell you we're committed to this project. We're committed to Lafayette, and we're not ignoring you, or we're not trying to railroad anybody or run over anybody. We're really interested in this community. I truly believe this can be an asset to the community. I truly believe we can do the right things on this project. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here, because I could easily retire today and leave this job. I'm here to do this. I've been a public servant for 30 years, and I'll be here for a few more. And I welcome everybody. I appreciate all your comments, and I really thank you for all your feedback. And believe me, I don't take any of this personally or any of that, because I do feel that I work for you. We're public servants. We work for you, and we're here to do the best, and we try to do the best for everyone, and that's what we're here to do. And I want to just thank y'all for having us here, and we'll come back sometime. Thank you.
Deidre, so you'll stay here for a few minutes for people that want to ask her or hand her a question at this moment. And we'll plan on that on the 7th of March, that they'll be back with the answers and hopefully an extension of that. I'd like to just tell you who our speakers are going to be. Hey, hello, would y'all hold up 1 minute, please? We appreciate y'all being here, but I'm trying to make sure that when you can get back here. Ella?
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
That was the point.
How about this? Can you hear?
Fix that mic.
Anyhow.
Pull it up. Yeah, we fix that mic.
Some roving commentators do that.
Our technician man left just a minute ago. But anyhow, on the 15th of the month, I think y'all maybe like to know about the environment. Greg Gitros, he's the Bayou Vermilion District Recreation and Education Coordinator. He will be our speaker. I think it's an important issue. If you understand something about the Vermilion, it'd be right along the line what we're talking about here this evening. And on March the 7th, I'd like to let you know too, both Bill, hopefully, and Deidre will be back with the questions, and hopefully that y'all will take time out to ask those tough questions. Get them to her. There are a number of ways. Call Ella. She'll have that email address that you can get even directed to her, and we'll appreciate it. Or you can get it from her this evening as you come up here. So that would be March the 7th, as we planning to make happen. March the 21st is a very important part of Lafayette. We're going to be having Dr. Aguilar speak on why we need a tax, or some form of tax. And I know that everybody gets scared to death when you say tax. It's about the education system. Let's hope that you come here and understand why he's going to be asking for certain monies to do a better job in the educational system. And there's a lot to that. I'm not going to attempt to even do that, but he will be prepared, and your questions will be also hopefully answered at that time. So we invite everyone back, whether you're a member or not. We'd like to have you here. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing by asking a lot of questions, and we hope that you'll continue doing so, and we appreciate y'all being here. Thank you very much, and the meeting is over.